Good evening. We are at a very exciting Ficci Frames Leap Forward convention. Leap for learn, educate, apply, and progress. Leap forward. And it's fully geared for the M&E industry, the media, entertainment, sports, business as a whole. We are on a session with unlocking creative careers, but here we're talking about unconventional careers. And before us are a panel of superstars who've achieved in impossible areas that no one thought was possible normally, areas which none of our education systems have ever prepared us for. Moderating this session is a very dear friend of mine, Roshan Abbas, clearly one of India's finest orators and storytellers. If he begins with a story, you know it's a winner. So Roshan has been a TV and radio host, film and theater director. Somewhere in between, he got drawn into the world of events and ran a company called Encompass, which got transformed into Geometry Encompass, part of the people. Roshan is a serial entrepreneur. From Encompass to Glitch to Commune, he's made businesses out of what never existed. And his latest passion, Commune, is something wherein he's bringing together the performing arts and storytellers in a collective. It's always exciting to work with him. He has created, along with his friends, the Spoken Festival, bringing together voices on a platform, voices that you never normally hear, or you'll see them far in between. He's given them a platform to be heard. Delighted to have you here, Roshan. Over to you. Please introduce your panelists and take over. We're looking forward to this session.
Thank you so much, Sabas. As always, it's a pleasure, and I think all of us need to petition for Sabas getting a geo connection, high speed, very soon, because I do sessions with him almost every week. It's so wonderful to always hear from him. I was actually looking at the consumption of data at home the other day, and I was fighting with the internet provider, saying, no, how much could we possibly be consuming? And I was shocked to see that there was about 1,400 gigabytes of data that one was consuming at home. 1,400 gigabytes. And what are we consuming? We're consuming everything that we love, whether it is news in the format that we want, whether it is content in the way that we want, whether it is curation of that content, which is done very often by critics, whether it is the comedy that makes us sit at home and believe that the pandemic can be dealt with, or whether it is your view on everyday life that we get with Prajakta. That's the most brief introduction I could have given to my panelists, but I'm now going to do a little more detail. Anjum Rajabali sir is somebody who is obviously deeply respected in the film fraternity, not just as a great writer, but as a great teacher. He has been chosen as the leading international teacher by SILECT, the association of more than 180 leading film schools across the world. Vikram Chandra is a very dear friend of mine, the one person on this panel who can throw all kinds of words at me if required, because we were in college together. And this was the man who decided to actually go out there, and all of us knew that he led NDTV Group from 2011 to 2016, and then moved on to set up something very, very unique called Editorji Technologies. At a time like this, when all we need are editors more than anything else in news, rather than, if I may use the word, propagandists, but that's my personal view. Vikram is here. Thank you, Vikram, for making it. Anupama, of course, really is a person who decides the fate of a very big industry. I would say that. She's going to keep laughing at that. But, chairperson of the Film Critic Guild, is director of the Jio Mami Mumbai Film Festival. She's also the founder of this absolutely wonderful platform called Film Companion. I hope that you all have gone and seen that, because unlike most other people, it wasn't just her presenting her views. She has built, almost a set of people who offer you their reviews, and it's almost become a companion for any cinema lover who exists. Anshu more. Now, what do I say about a man whose career I played a small role in, because here was a man who was happy with Xbox technologies, leading it in India. But then I said, listen, there's another X you need to fill out. And that was what his real passion is: stand-up comedy, storytelling. The man who has set up his own association and really has some amazing products he's created. 7 Moments of the Tweet and a Tweet is his corporate motivational program. His storytelling workshops do brilliantly. Clients that is almost a couple of pages long. But more than that, here is a man who has had all his videos going and hitting the million mark in just, I think, the last 2 to 3 years. So Anshu, very, very warm welcome to you. Finally, Prajakta, who is here with us. What do you say about the girl who has gone and made a mark for India across the globe? Whether it's an International Women's Summit, you will find Prajakta there as the voice of India, as the voice of the youth. But if there's anybody who has given YouTube creators their real status and their place, it is Prajakta. At last count, and that is when the email came to me, it said 5.5 million followers. And I said, I can't give this statistic because by now it must be a couple of million more. So thank you everyone for being here with us. Thank you all. I'm going to start this with Prajakta, because Prajakta, what you do is an inspiration for many young people. But if people who are watching us right now, policymakers, educationists, academicians, people who run universities, if they were to be asked to say, is there a course that can be created in what you do, what would you tell them?
First of all, hello everybody on the panel. This is such a pleasure to be amongst everyone here. Thank you so much, Roshan sir, for that very, very warm welcome. And I mean, yeah, why not? Hell yes. So many times when I'm meeting with viewers, they tell me, you know what, I don't think I want to study post 12th grade, because it's not like if you want to be a YouTuber, there's anyone who's asking for your degree, you know. And my answer to that is always, you know what, you have to go to college because it's more than the theory. Personally, I am a mass media student, and it was so much more than what was taught in the classes for me. It was what fun I had in the canteen. It was organizing college fest and stuff like that. Now, club that up with a course that actually teaches me what I want to do in the classes. I mean, why not? Yes, please.
Right. So definitely, I mean, mass media, I think mass media seems to be a common vein of some of the people who are here. I'm going to go to Anupama now and ask her, Anupama, today when you lead, this wonderful portal, Film Companion, when you're giving a space to film critics, and also not just that, but I think a voice for appreciating cinema in so many ways. Is this a career for the futures? Is it something you picked up along the way? How did it happen to you?
Like Prajakta, first of all, hello everybody. Really thrilled to be here, Roshan. You're lovely. You're just doing such a wonderful job of making us all very comfortable. And I know how hard this is. And I have to tell you that if Prajakta was teaching, I would be part of it. So it's not just for young people, old people would also be there because I'm a YouTube creator and I would learn so much from her. Honestly, for me, film criticism just happened. I trained to be a film journalist. I fell in love first with the Hindi film industry, not even with Hindi films. I fell in love with the industry when I started right out of college. I had nothing else. I was an English lit graduate. And at that time, there was either advertising or teaching, and I didn't want to do either. And somebody said, well, just go work for a magazine till you figure out what you want to do. And I worked with a magazine called Movie, which was, which doesn't exist anymore. But and I fell so hard in love with the craziness of the film business that I said, this is all I ever want to do, but I want to study to be a journalist. So I went to the US and I did a master's in journalism from Northwestern University. Then I worked in New York for a year. And still, my mother was like, America se koi wapas nahi aata, rehne do, find a job there. But this was the early 90s. And I said, all I want to do is write about Hindi film. I am just, seduced by Bollywood. And somewhere along the way, then I started to work for India Today, where I worked for 12 years. And from being a reporter, somewhere along the way, I became a film critic. And I think, honestly, I always feel like I wish I'd gone to college and done film studies. I wish I knew more about the craft. I wish I could say more informed things about cinematography and editing. And so I would love for there to be like courses on how to be a film critic, because, Pankaj Tripathi had said something lovely we had a Film Critics Guild Awards, and he said that film critics are like khad. They're like fertilizer. They help cinema to grow. And so if you have more learned film critics, if you have more informed film critics, hopefully somewhere we will encourage better cinema. And I always feel that that's a lack in my education, and I wish I had it, and I think we should have it. Movies are such a massive influence, and there should be more training.
Well, to somebody who I think shared office space with you, but surprisingly, I don't think you all connected there. But I'm just going to jump across to Vikram, who's there. Vikram, my dear friend, you've been in the news business, I think, from the very beginning. I mean, was it consciously something that you had wanted to do when you came out of college? Did you feel equipped for it at that point? That's my first question to you.
So it's great to be on the panel, and you're right. First time I'm speaking to Anupama, and it's wonderful because her brother is also called Vikram Chandra, and the number of people who confuse that Vikram Chandra with me is staggering. I've never spoken to her like face to face till now, or to him, but it's great to be here. Roshan, I think there's one thing which I've learned over this entire journey. It's that things are going to change, and careers and jobs are going to change so fast. It's happened in our lives. It's going to happen even faster going forward. You will recall, Roshan, we were in college together. What was it that I used to want to do when we were in college? I wanted to join the IAS. Remember, you remember sitting and studying over various, drinks in the dhaba. I used to say, I want to join the IAS. Then I said, no, I want to become a banker. Then I said, no, I want to become a journalist. But a journalist meant being a print journalist at that time. I'm talking about the same time when Anupama came back. I also went abroad, studied, came back to India. And I said, I'm going to be a journalist. I want to become a broadcast journalism. And everyone said, there's no broadcast journalism that exists in India. Koi TV nahi hai. There used to be only Doordarshan at that time. I worked for the India Today group. I worked for a news track. Cassettes, which you would put into your DVD player and watch it. That's what television news in India was when I started. Then TV came, and that entire TV cycle came. But here's the interesting thing. It doesn't stop. You may think that, oh man, we got into TV at an early enough stage, and now look at what happened, and it's great we did it. But I could already see that other change was coming. So by 2000, I was saying the internet is coming, it'll make TV redundant. So I started to get into IndieTV.com and other things around the web. And again, then the next change came 5 years ago when I wanted to set up Editorji 4 years ago. It was all of this is going to get disrupted. Television, TV news, all news, websites, everything is going to be disrupted by people using AI to disrupt this business. Now I've got to teach myself artificial intelligence. My age, I want to sit and try and teach myself artificial intelligence. It sounded like a crazy thing to do. I was 50. And I said, I'm going to try and teach myself AI. Why? Because another change is coming. So I think the one thing which I do want to leave with anybody who's listening to do this is, this has been there for the last 30 to 40 years. Anybody looking at any field right now, be prepared for the fact, whatever you think you know about that field today, it'll be completely different 4 years from now. So train yourself to change, because that change is the only thing that will not change in your life.
Well, absolutely. Amazing. I've got two more people I'm going to quickly bring in here, and thank you for waiting patiently, Anshu, because normally by now you would have been riffing off on people in your show. Maybe you're doing that in your mind. But Anshu, from where you come, I mean, and I've seen your journey so up close and personal. Did you feel straitjacketed in that job that you were doing at Microsoft? Every time you saw an anchor, comedian, or somebody being paid lots of money to do work that today you are doing, were you actually already getting that FOMO and saying, I'm going to be doing this soon?
No, actually, frankly speaking, when I left Microsoft, I didn't even know how much a stand-up comedian makes. And thank God, because that was 4 years ago and they weren't really making much. I possibly wouldn't have taken a decision. But at Microsoft, I think for me personally, not only with Microsoft, throughout my life, there was this love for stage and mic. And just making people laugh. It used to happen everywhere, and I thought I'm a great comedian because I could make friends and family laugh. Then I went up in front of strangers and I realized it was a totally different ball game. But it was just the love of the art, and it was something which was almost running in parallel. And then Mr. Imtiaz Ali one day made this movie called Tamasha. I got influenced and I quit and I just tried to follow my passion. And that's a true story. But it was really not about money. I came in with a very different mindset when I quit Microsoft. When we were kids, our parents used to tell us, right, that agar padhai nahi karoge to chai ki dukaan khologe. Right? And now I think we are in an era where Chayos and Chai Point are getting multi-million-dollar funding. So anybody who has a passion, I think money should be the least of the worries or concerns. It's more about learning the job, first of all. Like Vikram said, whether it's AI or Anupama said, just understanding, being a film critic. For me, the bigger challenge was just understanding what comedy is and, what stand-up comedy, how do I kind of get better at that?
Great. Anjum sir, I kept you for the last because you've got to script a great ending for this question. I really wanted to just, when we asked you, and just for everybody else's information, Anjum sir almost turned and said, "Ki bhai, mujhe to ye kuch unconventional lagta hi nahi hai. What I do, everybody else is doing unconventional things." Till I had to tell him that, sir, being a script writer by most of India is still considered to be an unconventional career. Did you never face this at all, sir? Did you ever come across this? या शुरुआत से ही आपको ऐसा मौका मिल गया?
No, so I never intended or planned to be a scriptwriter at all. In fact, I hadn't heard the word screenplay until I actually tried my hand at it. I had come to Bombay to become a practicing psychoanalyst. I mean, that was the only aim which I had, and that didn't work out. So essentially, I had a job which I was doing competently, was just blundering about, quite by accident. I discovered this through a very close friend, Baba Azmi, whose new film, as you know, has just come out, Need of Someone. And it was, since you jogged my memory and said that opting for this career itself may have been an unconventional choice, particularly in that context that I'm talking about, 92. And if people asked you, okay, what is it that you're doing? So I said, I'm writing. They said, yeah, no, writing is fine. This is a good hobby, but what is your job? What is your career? And it is that which I wanted to turn into a career. Now, certainly that reaction I did get from my family. People were worried in the film industry having the kind of name that it did at that time. It's changed a bit, just a bit. But yeah, people from outside do see that, do perceive it as maybe where all kinds of unethical practices go on, your ideas get stolen, all kinds of shenanigans take place. That was the other hurdle. But the important thing for this question was that there was no means of learning, Roshan. We didn't have a tradition of either apprenticeship or associateship, and certainly there was no formal education. You had FTII, which had begun in 1961, and there was no course in scriptwriting. There was a course in every other field of cinema, direction, acting, even production design, there was cinematography, sound, editing. All these were considered disciplines where one needed a certain degree of training to be able to go out and practice. Writing was an amorphous field. Not many people really, and I mean this literally. I think Anupama might bear me out because she started covering cinema around that time, if I remember right. That it was a very ill-defined job. There was no professional framework. There was no system of working protocols which were established. People worked on their own. When I asked, I said, how do you learn? They said, what learn? Just write. I said, no, but it's a screenplay. You have scene-wise breakdowns. You have a certain format within which you have to tell your story. This isn't like writing a short story in your, in your diary. So one has to adhere to something. So surely there are certain basic principles. None whatsoever. Absolutely none. And we suffered. We suffered on account of that. I understand it's a creative field, but because it has to finally dovetail into an industrial process. Okay. Hence, it is important that some basic guidelines, some basic framework principles ought to be learned and inculcated by people who want to practice it. So we blundered along. We learned on our own. I spoke with some people gave advice. I watched films, analyzed them and all. And yet I sorely missed that there has to be some institutionalized way in which learners and new aspirants who perhaps need a bit of guidance should be accorded that guidance. And eventually, that happened. For those who know, in 2004 is when I began the first screenwriting course here, which is in FTII. And that's where it began. Now it's fairly common. I mean, now you do have, Whistling Woods has a full-fledged one. FTII, of course, is doing very well. And it has helped. So it wasn't taken very seriously, to the extent that even film people would wonder, exactly what do you do? Meaning what? Most people thought you were basically the voice or the pen of the director. The director bolta hai. Aap likhte ho. And writers also spoke that same language. I said, have you written anything? He said, no, when the director tells me to write, then I will write. So it was independent screenwriting, speculative writing was just not on the cards. I mean, there was some, like you had your Salim Javed, who had done that. Mukram Sharma used to write his own stories. But really speaking, Roshan, I mean, 1992, we're talking about like 80 years of Indian cinema. And you could rattle off the names of the known scriptwriters, I suppose, on just the fingers of two hands, you know, which is how hidden and vague sort of the field was. So that is...
No, absolutely. I mean, thank you, A, for taking us through that, and thank you for starting that course, because without that, possibly it would have still remained quite a mystery. Vikram, you know, you would have on, you're talking of AI and news at one level, etc. But you know, Jack Ma had actually said that, you know, teach your children things that are soft skills, because don't teach them things that are just pure knowledge, because if you want to compete with machines. Now, is this, you believe, the future? I mean, are these courses, number one, the future? And B, how should we structure them? How can we do that? My next question to everyone on the panel is going to be this, saying, how can we structure this kind of learning?
You know, I'm not entirely sure to what extent you can actually structure it, because at least to my mind, how do you teach somebody something which is not, it doesn't even exist right now? What's going to be really important in sort of creative fields that all of us, for example, are in? Let's say 3 years from now, everything is going to be, or 5 years from now, it's all going to be about virtual reality or some other ways, or augmented ways of presenting. And how do you teach somebody that right now? I think the single most important thing that we've got to tell it, what we have to teach the young people, and this is something which we are all learning to do with our own kids, is leave them with the ability to learn. So teaching somebody the ability to go on learning is, to my mind, the single most important lesson. And it's something which we as parents have had to force ourselves to do. In my life, I had to sit down and tell myself, stop being a traditional Indian parent and saying, तुम्हें ये करना है, तुम्हें मैथ्स कर रहे हो कि नहीं कर रहे हो, तुम्हें साइंस करना है कि नहीं करना है, तुम अच्छे कॉलेज में जाओगे कि नहीं जाओगे. You got to teach yourself not to do that. So I actually encouraged, for example, my elder son to say he wanted to be a DJ once upon a time. I said, all right, fine, if you want to go ahead and do it. He ended up eventually choosing to be a scientist, but that's his choice. You got to learn to tell yourself, don't tell them what to do beyond a point, and just allow them to learn. Teach them how to teach themselves.
Well, you know, fair point there. But Anshu, you know, you also have a college-going son now. I mean, junior college, so that you don't sound really old. But your audio. So,
yeah,
so the important thing that I wanted to ask you, because when he had to go and select a course for himself, and I know that often you have these conversations, you talk so much to young people there. Do they find this gap? How do we fill that gap?
No, I think, like speaking from my son's experience, he went through this typical teenage cycle of thinking that he's very passionate about one thing and then next month changing it to another. But he was very clear that he wanted to get into this artistic world, and, you know, if I may call that the artistic world, and he eventually chose mass media, and, you know, kind of he's taking it from there. I think the spectrum should be wide open for such courses. Like when you get in, the spectrum should be wide open, because these guys don't know, you know, initially what their real passion is, if I may call it that, right? Whether they want to get into journalism or digital, or they actually want to get into screenplay, or, you know, different kinds of art forms. So that spectrum A should be wide open. Second, the thing that I see lacking right now, and he's done first year, and the thing that I see lacking is really actual experience of, especially if you want to become an artist. Like, nobody can teach you stand-up comedy. You can read a lot of books. You know, you can read autobiographies, you can see a lot of content, but eventually what teaches you stand-up comedy is standing on stage and, you know, talking in front of the audience. So that practical experience of art, just playing around with it, just trying to learn, and then there's some formal bit of structuring that is required. I think all these factors need to come in. But at the broad-based level, keep it open for 1 or 2 years. Don't force them into choosing a field. I mean, I chose the field after 44 years of, being, after 18 years of working in corporate life. And I was happy in corporate life. It wasn't a Ranbir Kapoor moment that I'm depressed here and I'm about to go and follow my passion. So, people realize it at different points of time. So I think the education system need to kind of keep it open. Let them choose, let them play around, let them come back, do something else. Give them that flexibility, I think would be very critical.
No, I think very good point that you made there, that the ability to do hands-on training for one, and the second part about having maybe some time where you could choose. And this is where very often I think parents look at the fact of saying liberal arts versus something extremely structured. Prajakta, I saw something very interesting, in fact, on a TED talk where somebody said that the Indian education system was originally geared to create accountants and administrators for the British Raj. That's why mathematics and English seem to be the two things. One to create communication, the other to create accountancy. And, that sort of became the obsession of the nation till new courses started coming. And that was really structured. When you chose mass media, and I know that in Bombay, the ability to have this junior college experience, while many other places it's 11th and 12th, again, extremely structured, right? I mean, there is that ability. Do you feel this is changing? And B, if you were given the opportunity to change it, what are a few things that you would do?
I mean, so I passed out of college in 2014, which is, not very
that really hurts now when somebody says I passed out college in 2014. Like, it really deeply hurts. 2014 was like...
Let's not go there. Let's not go into when we passed out of college.
Yeah, Anupama and I were on a graduation film recently talking about our days.
Oh boy. No. So all I'm saying is it's not very long ago. 6 years ago is when I passed out of college. And I remember passing out feeling so new, because I had done mass media. Because 6 years ago, till about 10 years ago, mass media had... I think in our college, we were the 5th batch of mass media to pass out. And that was the new cool thing, because suddenly there was all this like creative outburst happening in college, where suddenly there was a whole stream of people who were working less around math and more around, performing arts and writing and things like that. So I remember... even then, it was such a cool thing for me, because before me, most of my, like, mere bhaiya, mere didi वगैरह जितने भी थे, मेरे मामा के बच्चे वगैरह, most of them passed out in commerce and science. Most of them, and there wasn't a very big age gap. It was 3 to 4 years, not more than that. So I feel like then, yes, definitely, I feel like it had started changing, where it was normalizing a little bit, because everybody knows, like Vikram sir spoke about the typical Indian parent expectations of, doing this, go to this college, learn science, learn math. But if I had to change something, now that I look back, I see that there were subjects like content writing. We had subjects like brand building, but we didn't have examples, or we didn't have any experience in actually understanding it a little bit more. Like, for example, if I had to think of a content writing workshop right now, and then I look at all the stories that you put out, or I look at one of my favorite YouTube creators coming and talking about how he or she breaks down her script, I feel like just the one thing I would change is I would mix the whole theoretical and practical way of it. That way, now that I think of what I learned at content writing, maybe that would be more useful for me now that I actually do it in life.
But also Prajakta, if you look at it, you learned how to edit, you learned how to make your videos, you had to put some kind of science into that as well. I mean, you may have learned the right way on the job, but you did know these things. Yeah. And I think that for this generation, I mean, there's this, YouTube says that this is a generation C, generation of creators, right? And on the other side, a generation of consumers. Now, if it is a creator-consumer mix that is taking place, where anybody can be a creator, then the tools of creation should definitely be available to them, right? I think that should become maybe a universal thing which people should get to know.
For sure. Again, but then, sir, isn't it already pretty available for people who are actually looking for it? I don't know. I could be
Sure,
completely wrong.
absolutely. No, very fair point. Very fair point. And this is where I think the point, Anupa, I'm going to come to you and ask you was this. I've often heard of the Waldorf school. And the Waldorf school in its methodology of education talks about think, feel, and do. I mean, they don't teach children, mathematics, etc. First, they teach them music. And then through music, they teach them maths. And I have found some absolutely brilliant kids because, many kids who come to commune, etc. And I've asked a bunch of them. And by surprising number, I find that some of them have passed out from this absolutely eclectic kind of background. And, and they come up with crazy ideas. And I somehow feel that maybe it's at the base level. The new education policy tries to add things from class 6th onwards, but maybe it needs to start even younger than that. What are your views?
My kids went to the Ambani school, and there, in fact, the rigor really kicks in at the 4th, 5th, 6th level, and the first few years. It may have changed. Then I'm talking about 10 years, 15 years ago, but. The fact that they could have so much free play in the really young classes was very, it really shaped just how they think, who they are. My son is an aspiring cricket player. My daughter is an aspiring creative writer. So my family is completely, nobody did the science and maths route. And I think the fact that at their education level, though it got really tough in the later years, it's very important to put this in at a very young stage and, give arts the importance that we should in everybody's life. Look at, we're all in a place of great privilege. Through these past 6 months, we have not had to struggle for the roof over our heads and the food on our table. And what has got us through this is the arts. The stories we've consumed, the books we've read, the kind of, the art that has been put out there has really given us sustenance at a very, very difficult time. And I think if we start exposing kids to that much earlier, we will only get people who will think in more expansive ways and perhaps more evolved ways, rather than just, I've never been a big fan of math. I don't want to diss it publicly. But I'm saying, और भी बहुत चीजें हैं ना दुनिया में. So we should definitely throw some painting at them. And again, these are all things I wish somebody had taught me. When I went to school, तो कुछ भी नहीं था. It was just
perhaps your last review was Shakuntala Devi earlier.
Yeah.
I'm going to come to Vikram. Vikram, I wanted to ask you something, saying that, I was so excited when this idea came and I went up and I looked up a couple of the online courses. Whether you look at Upgrad, whether you look at Unacademy, because many people are saying traditional education will break and you will have all these lovely internet courses. Even there, sadly, the top courses are Python coding. There is some amount of work. Coding, we now seem to be creating not accountants and literature students. We now seem to be creating people who will code and become the back office of the rest of the world. When will this change? Or is this just something which is a figment of my imagination?
No, I think, I pretty much think that unfortunately these things will continue because, look, for all that we say and the way we think the world should move, I hope the new education policy and all of this will start changing the way we approach it. But for the moment, no matter how much you may say, I would like my kid, let's just be honest about this, how much you say that, the kid should be free to do whatever they want to do and the rest of it, at some point that desire that you have eventually cascades into saying, okay, but even if you want to do creative arts, you've got to go to a college. Now, which college are you going to go to? How are you going to get into that college? Now, you may be saying that, this person sings very well or plays the guitar very well or, writes really good stories. But at some point, the marks are going to come into it. Now, when you're applying for a job, if you, as Prajakta, somebody else is saying also, if you haven't been to a college, okay, after class 12, you may not need to. But if you haven't been to college, when you're going and trying to apply to somebody or talk to somebody and saying, this is what I have on my resume, you may find it tough. So to some extent, I think even in our minds, we are somewhat conflicted between what we think should be the ideal norm and what the reality of the world is. And it's not very easy to breach this. I guess, Roshan, to answer you, the best way to do this is if we could certainly at the college and other levels move to a sort of a system where, like you do in America to some extent, where you could be going and doing a course where you're doing 1 class of coding and 3 classes of music and 1 class of English and 1 class of science, and you emerge with a degree of some sort or the other, but you've done a bunch of stuff. Some of it is useful, some of it is what you want to do. Maybe that's the way to head, but I don't think we are there right now, not in this country, we're not there.
Absolutely, I quite agree. Anjum sir, I wanted to just ask you that the same thing I was saying, that people are saying a lot of what we are talking about in unconventional careers is learned on the job. But you have structured a course in film script writing and made it into a thing that people can study. Where do we start? What are some common things everybody, just to even spark this idea of unconventional thought or creativity, what should we be teaching people at a younger age?
Roshan, if you were to really look at how we need to define, let's say, the word unconventional, okay, literally it would mean something which is against the existing stream or different from the convention which has been established. But where is that urge coming from? It's not coming merely from this position saying, I am doing this because I want to do something different. No, I want to do something which I want. Okay, that. So I'm saying if we were to, right from early primary stages of education and of life, if we were to encourage this creative urges in children, everybody knows that human beings are born as creative geniuses. It's essentially the regimentation and the socialization and the education system primarily which seems to sabotage that, frankly speaking. Because then you get into competitive grading, you get into fear of failure, there is all kinds of anxieties that parents bring on you, much as Vikram was also arguing against it, but he also honestly admitted that, yes, there is an anxiety that parents do feel because all said and done, the child is going to step out in the world and the world is not necessarily being designed for your unusual, urges of expression. But I'm saying if this was actually formalized into the education system, and if parents also were to have trust in that, and given the number of opportunities opening out, as Prajakta was saying, Anshu, of course, is a living example, that no matter what you try today, haath pair maar ke paisa to mil hi jata hai. Vikram, I mean, I am differing with you on that. Kisi bhi tarike se, opportunities can be created. People are doing that all the time. So if there was some confidence that parents had in that, if the education system also built that in, then in which case I feel certain basic principles of creative expression, very fundamental principles. Now, I only know a little bit about storytelling, and I can tell you this, that once again, referring a little bit to what Vikram said, that one doesn't know what the future will be in 5 years from now, and therefore, so what does one teach, really speaking? No, I'm going down to the fundamentals. I'm saying the fundamentals, for example, of storytelling for times immemorial don't seem to have changed because human experience, internal experience hasn't changed. So there are certain things which are not changing, which is what we are as human beings, our psyche, our nature. And from these infinite possibilities come out, but the core of human nature being the same. Hence, I think a certain constancy has always been possible in human civilization. And I'm saying the confidence in creativity, that it is not going to necessarily create some anarchy that parents feel, kuch bhi karega, matlab what? What, he'll go into drugs or he'll start growing a beard and moving around the streets. No. I want some predictability. I'm saying it's possible to chart that out, provided there is confidence in allowing the child's creativity to lead her ambitions rather than the other way around these days. It is that first fix your ambition, kya banega, and now design your intelligence and your brain and your mind and your likes and dislikes to fulfill that. Okay, change your lifestyle. So I'm saying we should make it.
I think confidence in creativity is a great thing that you said. We must have that confidence. Anshu, you had your finger raised, and I think there's something. Please. I was going to come to you.
No, just a quick point in this. I think it's a very valid fear that every parent has, which is, isme career banega ki nahi banega, right? And more than just the money part of it, is it like a proper career? Can you spend your lifetime doing this, and how difficult will it be? I still remember, not in stand-up comedy, but when I was heading Xbox at Microsoft, I'll just give you a very small incident. There was a colleague of mine at Microsoft who had this young kid, about 12, 13 years old. And he used to come to me and say that, you're heading Xbox and Xbox bachcho ko bigaad deta hai, and my son keeps playing games all the time. Just a casual conversation. But he was telling me about this whole thing that his son is obsessed with games. So I told the son, and Anupama made like this. I told him, I said, tell your son that every time we launch a new game, tell him to review it. Okay. And send me a review of that. So that kid started reviewing the game. And while he was reviewing, he started understanding the technology behind creating these games. And then he reached to Microsoft. That kid kind of came to our office and said, help me understand, how do I make games? And it's a big business, right? Creating, gaming console games are a huge thing. And suddenly there was a path that this guy who was just playing games had in terms of a career. Now, not many people know about this. My son is deeply into movies, like the kind of movies that he watches and the directors he follows. I don't even know they exist, right? He's into that fine art of understanding movie making. But I don't know what path should I guide him to right now to say, hey, go explore. How do you become a film critic or a producer or a director or a screenplay writer? I don't know that. And that path is what education system needs to make clear.
Prajakta, I'm going to come in directly to you because of that, saying, do many young people now suspiciously look at our education system? Do they just feel कि यार वो 12 तक पास कर लो, parents के लिए college कर लो, फिर अपनी जिंदगी तो खुद बना लेंगे? Because there is, see, look at it. Very often people will look at education abroad with this shine and sheen. In India, they will look at IIT, they will look at medical colleges, they may look at IIMs, and everything else is cast aside in this, यहाँ तो बस factory में पिसने जा रहे हैं.
I think it's a very common conversation that comes up. कि अच्छा चलो ये तो जो करना है कर ही रहे हैं, life तो मुझे उसमें बनानी है. I feel like exactly like Anshu sir said, I think that is what can be tied together really, really well. If I go to college and I learn something that fuses very well with what I want to do, and yes, I agree with you there for sure. That is something that, at least last time I checked, is happening, unless suddenly kids have become, no, we have to do this.
No. That's what I'm saying. So I'm just going to quickly ask Vikram. Vikram, the pandemic has done something to education, which is that tertiary education, because of its pricing, has actually been decimated because everybody is saying, am I paying for the knowledge or am I paying for the badge? And kids who are studying in Harvard, sitting at home here, are feeling extremely sad. And their parents are most infuriated about the money they have to pay while the kid is here, right? I mean, and I can tell you the number of people I've known, because of the families that one connects with. And I just sometimes, and Scott Galloway, who's becoming one of the new voices in education abroad, and he's running a couple of internet courses, is saying that, people who are asking people to come back to university are only doing it for the desperation because the cost of education or the cost of running those establishments is so high. And I somehow can't understand why. I mean, could you throw some light on this? What are your views on tertiary education?
So actually, I want to also link that with all Anjum was saying, because actually I don't disagree with him, too much, that a lot of this is not actually that valuable. You should allow people to do their own creativity. It is perfectly possible to get to understand and to learn what you want to learn or what you need to learn through other means. You don't have to go to a college abroad and spend, $250,000 to do it. You could learn a lot of that in other methods. I just take your thought forward, Roshan. I know so many people who are doing very well in their career and then say, oh, I have to go now because I need to go and get an MBA somewhere. I'm going to get out of doing something which I'm doing really successfully, where I'm well established, and I'm going to go off and do a MA somewhere in some college abroad. I actually believe that a lot of that is literally what you said, is to get that badge, is to get that thappa, is to get something put onto your CV. And I think one of the important things to realize, and I think that's what I was trying to say earlier, is a lot of this is designed to get into the job. When you're going and applying and seeking the job, unfortunately, a lot of people look for those badges when that resume comes. College kya hai, nahi kya hai, kahan gaye the, acha abroad gaye the, nahi gaye the, all of that. It's to get in. Once you've actually got your foot into the door, once you're already doing what you love and what you may be successful in, I don't think those badges matter anymore. Which is one of the reasons why, to take your point, there have been people who've been in the organization that I've been running who've come to me. They're doing a really fantastic job, well established, well settled, and they're chucking it up to go abroad to do some course. I'm saying, why are you doing it? You don't need to entry. You don't need the entry ticket anymore. So Roshan, it's an entry ticket. And I think we should try and find ways to give people different entry tickets so you don't have to enter using the conventional means. मैं इस college गया था.
One other, and I'm going to throw this one open to anybody who wants to comment on it. One other thing that when I spoke about unconventional careers and was asking people around, many people turned and said, "Yeah, unconventional career mein ek Prajakta hoti hai, ek Anupama hoti hai." You know, everybody who's on this panel are people who are successful because at the top end of these creative careers there is money to be made, but below that there is a life of just sitting on editing tables and doing the regular rigmarole. There is nothing different in that than any other job in the world. So people say that, you know, this is definitely has its advantages, but it's a lot more difficult. Does anyone think that's true? Because that's a comment that came to me. Anupama? And then
everything is difficult. I think that it's, I mean, for me, honestly, rigor is the most important thing. It doesn't matter what you're doing, but if you're not willing to, and every job is going to have some part of it which is sitting at the edit table and doing boring shit, which Prajakta will testify to. There's no free lunches in this town, yeah. None of this is as glamorous as it looks, you know, but you love it. You're there because you will, I can't tell you how many abysmal films I've seen in my lifetime, okay? There are moments where I just say to myself, you know, this is it. My life is just gonna go 3 hours at a time watching awful movies, and I will be someday old and I will look back and I will say, ye kya hua yaar? Meri to puri life aise chali gayi. But that's fine, because there will be enough great movies to uplift my spirit and give me. So there's going to be a downside to everything. And if you're not willing to work hard, then, you know, I don't even know what to say to you, because honestly, that's, for me, hard work is just the punishing rigor of it is fundamental to whatever you do.
I agree completely. Prajakta, before you answer, I want to just say one thing. Was Prasoon Joshi said on a panel that the one danger that this generation has got is that button to put, you know, send or upload. He said, ये जो button है ना, बड़ा dangerous button है, because इससे पहले अगर आप normal किसी process में होते, because I was talking about the democratization of content creation. And he said that, you know, the danger is that because anybody can press upload, anybody can press send, there is really no review mechanism apart from your own self, and people have not been trained enough, and therefore they think anything they create is great, you know. And you remember that whole TikTok, YouTube battle that had started in between. Even today, people are saying there is too much content out there. There's not enough curation. Is this a lack of, you know, education? Is this a lack of filters being placed? Is it a lack of having reviewers before you put content out? Prajakta?
That for me, sorry.
Yeah. Prajakta is like, correct.
So I'll tell you very honestly, a creator or what gets uploaded is only as good as what gets consumed. The fact that there is mass content uploaded is directly proportionate to the fact that there is mass content consumed. You know, which is why I've always said this, that there is no way of saying this is good content or this is bad content anymore on the internet, is what I think. Because there's an audience for everything. और जिस चीज की audience नहीं है, वो content अपने आप filter हो जाता है. That content does not surface, that content does not reach anybody. Tomorrow, I could put out a video that appeals to the masses and it could do millions of views. And the day after, I could put a video out that does not click with anybody, and that will just be gone. Nobody will even notice that it was there. So I agree with you where the only reviewing that happens is all the censorship that happens is self-censorship. That's the responsibility that you take as a creator. And that is not something that you can, you know, expect of somebody, or it's not something maybe that's happening overall. But then again, the content that is getting uploaded is getting consumed. So the circle is actually closing there. So
wow. Okay, Vikram?
Yeah, so I would say that it depends on different fields. In areas like the news, for example, I don't think you can leave it completely to that, because I've never been a great fan of citizen journalism. Means that everyone on the mobile phone is going on and saying this has happened, because it can be dangerous, right? Somebody says Mandir is burned here, Masjid is burned there. You could start riots. You could have people, you know, not that people aren't. You can have seasoned anchors today who are sitting and trying to set the country on fire. So it's not that you would need that, you know, so I will give you that, Ryder, that it's not that professionals are doing a better job than anyone else would. But I do believe that certain checks and balances are there, you know, certain amount of training. So it's different, I guess, in comedy or music or other areas. It's fine if there's some not that great content. people will not watch it or will watch it. But I do believe that in areas like the news, and that's what one of the things that we do at Editorji is, you can't create news stories. You can select the news stories, add your opinion and upload them, but you can't say this is what happened, because this is what did happen. That's a fact. So different fields will have different rules, I think.
No, I agree. I'm going to actually, we've got the last 10 minutes in this, so I wanted to just come to you all with one thing. One is, because we're talking unconventional careers and you all have given everybody a great view of a little snippet of what you all do, the areas that you are in. There are two questions that I'm often asked. One is, what is the range? Parents ask, kitne paise milenge? Very important question. So one, any range that you can give me in your line of work, and nobody's going to hold you to it. It just gives people a sense. Prajakta, you don't need to go into the millions. You can even talk in the lakhs. It's all right. but even otherwise, that's one part. Secondly, because you want to leave a lot of the universities and educationists with some thought starters, which you've given many of, creativity and confidence, rigor being so important, on-job training, all of these things that you all have made as points. But the second thing I want is, if there were a couple of modules to suggest, please, while everybody else is giving their views, think of what are one or two modules that you feel should start being taught at a junior level or at a senior level, or maybe even just throughout. I'm going to first start with you, Anshu, in terms of this range that I asked for. And please, just feel free. I mean, I'm happy to do that myself on some of the careers I have had.
Yeah, so I think if you look at stand-up comedy right now, if you're starting off and you're an absolute newcomer, you will not make anything till you start hitting smaller shows where you're getting 15-20 minutes to perform. There you typically make about $10,000-15,000 a month. Okay, that's largely what you make if you're just a new comedian. But if you're established, if you're creating hours and doing tours, and you have the ability to sell to, let's say, a Netflix or an Amazon OTT platforms, you could be making close to about 15 crores a year. And that's the spectrum, right? And there is enough and more for everybody to play. And especially in a country like India, Roshan, just to give you a quick number, there are, I think, close to about 60,000 comedians in New York. In New York alone, 60,000 comedians. I don't think there are more than 300 comedians in this entire country. So massive potential to grow. And
can't take a joke.
Yeah, correct. We need to be more of us. So I think, so there's a spectrum, Roshan. I think, but I personally, honestly believe, although it will go against the question, that if your criteria for following an unconventional career is money or being a celebrity or having the spotlight on you, you'll be very disappointed, because like Anupama said, the amount of effort and work that is required. Like, I have worked more in these 4 years than I did in the 18 years I spent in my corporate life. So it is not fun and play. Your motive need to be very different when you're getting into unconventional career.
But it is highly rewarding, as I know.
Highly rewarding.
If you talk of the work and rigor, you should see Prajakta's exercise videos. Okay, Prajakta.
That is what keeps me sane. I got to do that every day. I'm going to lose my shit.
Good, I know that. So give us an idea, Prajakta. There's so many youngsters, so many university people looking at the fact of saying, "Acha, ladki, jati hai, Michelle Obama se milke aa jati hai, sab karti hai, वगैरह, पर कमाती है कि नहीं कमाती? लोग कमाते हैं तो क्या कमाते हैं? What's the range?"
पहले बात तो बता दूं कि बड़े टाइम से ना बड़े लोगों को लगता है, स्पेशली पेरेंट्स कई बार आके ये पूछते हैं कि जो हर व्यू पे $1 मिल जाता है, तो मेरे पास 700 how many, I'm close to 700 million views. I don't have $700 million for sure, so that's not true. Lekin, like Anshu sir said, it is extremely dynamic. It can, when I started off, I didn't make any money for the first 1 year. Like, there was nothing. I wasn't even banking enough views to convert dollars to rupees and get anything in my account. You know what I'm saying? But I think by the second year, it started going to about 10,000 a month. And then it stretched to about 15, 20, 30,000 a month. And then after that, the ball started rolling. And I am very, very, very proud that I know a lot of my creator friends, and overall as a community, there are brand deals happening for crores of rupees. I know creators who are signing year-long or 2-year-long deals for 3 crores or 4 crores, and I know that is a range, which is also extremely motivating for someone like me. But like he said, that, and you know what? I don't think we can even cap it at that, because the way life is changing, the way things are changing. Like 5 years ago, if someone told me that, you know, you would earn 30,000 rupees in a month, I'd be like, what? What are you saying? Doing this? How would I do that? Right? I wouldn't believe it. But similarly, 5 years from now, who knows where it's going to be? What kind of marketing is going to happen? What kind of AdSense ups and downs are we going to see? How many people are investing in it? So there is really no way of capping like a top of it.
Just a range. I think these are wonderful examples for people. For, you know, I'm saying even for youngsters to go and say, hey, listen, this can be viable. 15,000 bhi enough hai, 30,000 bhi bahut hai. Anupama, does film criticism pay? Because that's the one thing I wanted to always ask you.
You know, I mean, I'm listening to 15 crores and 4 crores, and I'm like, yaar, galat profession chali hai.
Wahi keh raha tha.
So no, I don't know any film critic who's making crores, but there is huge satisfaction and a lot of love in it.
So absolutely, and then if you set up Film Companion, then yes, there are a couple of great brand deals, etc. Things will happen. So please don't lose heart. Anjum sir, percentages of films gross is what I've heard sometimes. Then I've heard of base fees. Now I've heard of scoping fees. What's the range in your profession?
Primarily in screenwriting, you have three formats. You have film, cinema, you have television, and you have now the web series, which has been going on. Things are definitely better, partly because of objective conditions where the respective industries begin to realize that achhi script nahi hoti hai. So it's very difficult. Not forget a good film, you can't even make a successful film. So ये बहुत ज़रूरी है. Web and etc. are led by writing. So these are the objective conditions which are changing from the side of the production houses. But on the other hand, also we've also been fighting to establish. So the subjective sort of pushes have also been there. So today, if you see, firstly, there's a great demand. In the pandemic, so definitely, I mean, everybody is busy for a very long time because all producers want now a script bank, because when it opens, those who have, you know, scripts will be off the mark as soon as possible. See, film ke liye, Roshan, today I would say, if you take a beginner to an established writer, the range would be anywhere between 10 lakh for a script for a feature film to upwards of a crore, which would go into maybe 120 or so, depending on whether you have a record of success and how big the film also is. In web also, they paid pretty well. There are gradings because you have Amazon, Netflix, who have deep pockets, and then of course you have your Disney Hotstar and Z5 and Sony Live, which are slightly less. But it's definitely decent money. The best writing money, I guess. I mean, certainly much more than what film critics are paid. Okay, to manage to get, or even journalists. So yes, it is true. It is there. And television, if you are willing to submit yourself to the sort of brain bheda fry which you have to do, there is a lot of money.
Thank you. Vikram, you're going to end this for me just as a great editor should, and one of my favorite news anchors. So I'm going to let you bring up the end of this conversation and give us some idea of that range.
So, you know, in journalism, obviously the range is as wide, if not wider than anywhere. As Anupama said, nobody really becomes a journalist because you think you're going to make a lot of money, right? It's 90% of journalists will not make too much money. And again, the range has been different. Depends, are you vernacular? Are you on television? Are you not on television? Are you on-screen talent or are you not on-screen talent? So there would be a very small handful of people who would get paid at that high end, which would be in the crores, but that's a very, 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 very small number. The large variety of people would be getting a much lower range. And you know, when you're talking about the grassroots journalists and vernacular languages in small towns, others who are doing it, so the range would be anywhere from 5,000 rupees a month to that crores number. That's what the range would be.
Wow. Thank you so much, everyone. I mean, I just tried to keep this within time because you know, that's the one thing everybody needs. After being zoomed in, there is time to be zoomed out for a little while nowadays. You know, thank you very much, Anshu, Vikram, Anjum sir, Anupama, Prajakta. Thank you. Prajakta, thank you for being among some of us as senior citizens. I know, poor kids sitting there and saying,
I've been so nervous the whole time. I'm like, Prajakta,
I know that face of yours, which is why. So I just want to tell everybody that, that there was one last thing I was holding right at the end to tell people, saying that, countries like Korea, Japan have set up ministries of cool. There is a ministry of cool that actually helps build movements. There is a reason why today everyone loves Korean serials, why a Gangnam Style becomes famous, why Japan produces amazing manga and video games, why food is such a big thing that people are talking about. This is the soft power of a nation. And as our Prime Minister often keeps talking about India being an event, well, all of these professions make that event even more lively, even more colorful. Go and really invest in the education. If educators are listening to us, universities are listening to us, we've tried to appeal to your commercial side, to your patriotic side, to your parental side, to every possible side, to say this is the time to make that fundamental change, because believe you me, it is going to be an unconventional person who will make the next big leap. It was an Elon Musk who on certain days is called a madman, and on certain days the man who will take us to Mars. What he succeeds in, what we succeed in, only time will tell. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you once again for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks very much, Rosh.